welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. Today after the day job, I am off to check out the latest in the Insidious franchise, Insidious: The Red Door. So what is the story of this? Well, I don't know exact plot details, but I do know that it is saying at least it is the wrap-up story to the Lambert family, and that is the family that's from the first and second movie, which is starring Patrick Wilson. Now, Patrick Wilson plays the dad in those two films, and he's also playing the dad in this film. And he is also wearing two hats because he also directed this film. It is his directorial debut. So that's got me really intrigued in this movie. You know, I would like to see, first off, because he's been in, well, like a majority of them, so I know he's got a good idea of how these movies work and the vibe and all. So I'm kind of curious to see what his interpretation of being, you know, an actor that has been in a good deal of these movies in the franchise. See what his interpretation of the movies are. Looking forward to it. I'm not really sure what the story details are, you know, they're kind of hush-hush, obviously, they don't want you to know everything. So, anyways, guys, I'm kind of looking forward to this because I do generally, I like these films, they're okay, I don't think they're not my favorite, but they are decent for PG-13 horror. I do think that they're a fun, kind of, you know, a light horror film, and for some reason I find them really good around, like, Halloween? Like, they just seem like Halloween-y movies to me, even though they don't take place during Halloween. Maybe it's the ghosts and spookiness, I don't know. But anyways, enough of me yammering and jibber-jabbing. I gotta get out of here because I gotta get to the old day job, and then, you know what? I am off to check out Insidious: The Red Door. Welcome back, just getting home, and you know what, guys, I'm really sorry to say, I didn't really like this movie. Okay, now let's get into it. Alright, so we're going to do this as we do. I'm going to start things off with the negatives and then move into the positives. Okay, first blaring negative of this film. It was boring. I did find myself being very bored in this film. Really, it's the beginning of the movie. It takes a while for this film to kind of launch off. And there is kind of a fun little beginning. I wouldn't call it a scare necessarily, but there's a really cool, creepy moment at the beginning of this film. And so it kind of puts you in the spot. You're like, oh, okay, cool. If it's going to be like that kind of movie, I'm going to have fun. But that was really it. That was really the only intensely creepy atmospheric moment, was right at the get-go, and then everything else from there on out is nothing but completely cheap jump scares. There is no real tension. There's no nail bite. There's no suspense. There's just loud noises and something jumping out at you. And that is literally the entire horror of this entire thing. Most of the horror, no, I'm sorry, all of the horror in this film are cheap jump scares. It's like I was watching a 2000s horror film again. I'm like, oh my god, Blumhouse has just gone right back to their old freaking tricks. They don't care. It's just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. And that's all it was. And here is the worst thing, folks. Now, when you go see a comedy, one of the biggest fears that people have is that all the jokes are in the trailer, or trailers, as the case may be. Well, in a horror movie, the last thing we want is to know the scares before we go into it. And guess what? All of the really good scares are in this movie. Are in this trailer, pardon me. All of the really good scares in this movie are in the trailer. So when the scene starts up, you know exactly what's going to happen because you've already seen the big reveal of the jump scare in the trailer because they were already trying to scare you to go see this movie. And it was kind of sad. There were really great moments that could have been awesome, but because I already knew they were coming, it was completely ruined for me. A good example, it's in the trailer, so this is not a spoiler. When he was in the hospital, in the trailer, it shows him getting a CAT scan, and there's a really cool jump scare where like a ghost comes out of nowhere in there, and there was all this build up and suspense, and it was probably one of the creepiest moments in the entire movie, but if I wouldn't have known when the jump scare was coming, it would have worked, but I knew, so it was just a matter of sitting there waiting, and so all of that tension and all of the atmosphere that they were trying to create completely thrown out the window because I knew what the punchline was. And that really annoyed me. The atmosphere, not really there, no tension. I never at one time felt any kind of dread or foreboding or fear that something was going to happen to somebody in this movie. It seemed like everyone was just wearing plot armor throughout the entire thing. We didn't have anything that really felt like somebody was going to get hurt. And really, that's not a staple of the series, except, of course, if you're Elise. Which is always made me laugh that the character who dies in the first movie is in every single one of the sequels after that. Granted, 2 of the sequels are prequels, but I just find it interesting that the one character that I find the most interesting dies in the very first film. However, she is still in every single one of the movies. The Lambert family can't even say that. So I find that really interesting. And you know what? Saying that she's in this movie is not a spoiler because guess what, guys? It was in the trailer too. So that's not some kind of reveal. It was in the trailer. All of the good stuff in this movie, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen Insidious 5. Oh, boy. Wow. I'm going to have a quick drink here. Okay, now as admitted, I did say that I have pretty much found this series okay at best. Okay at best, alright? But good PG-13 horror films. The first Insidious is definitely one that I like the most. That one seemed to have the most fun, the most scares. It really seemed like it should have just been a one-and-done type film. Or, this is what they could have done, to be perfectly honest. Instead of killing Elise off in the first film, maybe if you're going to make sequels about this, how about her and her parapsychologist friends that join her on her little wacky adventures? That would have been more interesting movies, and we probably would have gotten better scripts and better movies out of doing that rather than this weird, convoluted, bouncing around through time thing that they've been doing. It just didn't work for me. So on a whole, this didn't work as a very good wrap-up to the series. If this is supposed to be the last one, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the last one. But gosh darn, it just didn't knock it out of the ballpark. It didn't wrap up the story as well as I thought it would. I feel like it didn't have a very solid villain. There was nothing. I mean, every now and then, because like all the movies, they've had some big baddie, that this is the ghost that they have to beat. In this one, there's just nothing. It's just like, okay, here we go again into the further. Alright, so you're sitting there probably wondering, did I like anything about this movie? Because I did say positives. Alright, guess what? There are some things in this film that I like. Number one, the acting is not half bad. All of the actors in this film do a good job. They aren't, they're taking it seriously, and I liked that, even though the script really doesn't give them a whole lot to work with. Also, the directing of the film is not bad. There is some really cool ideas. It just, nothing really came together for me. But really good concepts, and also the camera work in this film is really well done. The movie even opens with a cool shot and was executed excellent. And so I thought this is where we're going with this movie. And that brings me to, again, that first creepy moment where you think that's what this film's going to be like. And yes, there are great moments throughout this film that you're just like, oh, okay, it's going to get better, but it just doesn't. And the directing is part of that. The directing was what was making it better. This script just didn't have anything there. The whole time I was watching the film, I was just trying to figure out what the point was. I feel like the last one they put out, the fourth film, even with it being a prequel, did a pretty good job wrapping up the story. The second film in the series does a pretty good story, a wrap up for the Lambert family. I don't recall there being anything that needed to be tied up in that situation in the first place. So I don't know exactly why this movie got made. And I know I'm in the positives, and I think that was all I had. The acting was not bad. It was solid acting. Everybody does a good job. There was a lot of young actors in this film. This movie does focus mostly on the son in college, which I liked. I thought that this might be moving this series into a different direction, you know, maybe bringing the son in more, and I was behind that, but I don't think it's going to. So yeah, there was some really good elements that I did like. There was it wasn't really coming together correctly. The puzzle pieces weren't fitting together for me. It was just like kind of boring, and then jump scare, boring, jump scare, and then a really awesome shot or really good moment that does kind of feel like it's going to go in a different direction, and it just doesn't. So guys, I don't know what to tell you on this one, except that, I mean, personally, if I were to pay full price for this film, I would have been a little upset. I think this is a solid, if you're curious, stream it. And to be honest, maybe that's what they should have done with this movie. Release it on something like Shudder. I don't know. But it just did not feel like a full-blown, big-budget horror film to me. In fact, there was one moment in the movie that it really felt like you were just in a haunted house. And I mean, it really was. Like you were just going through some high school spirit club haunted house. Dang it, I really didn't want to beat this movie to pieces. I really didn't want to do that. So again, I'm going to focus on the things that I said were nice. The directing wasn't bad, there were great moments that could have been cool, and the acting held it together. Those are the only things that really made this movie entertaining. Other than that, I don't have anything else here. If you're curious about this, stream it. If you're a massive fan of the Insidious series and you think it's the finest thing that's ever happened to horror, well, good for you. I am not putting you down in what's so cool. If this is your jam, awesome. I love horror movies too. And you know what? One of my favorite series, the Sleepaway Camp series, it's god-awful. So I get it. You know what? Sometimes horror fans, we just gel with things that are dumb and goofy and cheesy, but we just love it. We just do. And that is probably what this movie is. It's probably perfect for the Insidious fans out there. So I'm sure all of you are going to enjoy it and have a great time with it. And that's cool. Awesome, rock on with your bad self. I wish it would have worked for me, but here we are. Okay, guys, well, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what I saw, well, if you liked what you saw here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.